Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer, Chris Carter. That is Nick Wright. And on the second day of spring, we are just moments away from a Jagunda nor'easter here in New York City.
Giant snowstorm coming.
Come on.
But CeCe, a giant snowstorm's coming. CeCe did some Hall of Fame hands pre-show. I don't quite know why, but there was some... if people knew what it took to get this football to sit perfectly the way it is right now without moving, that was done at the last possible second.
Rule changes, so we changed the desk a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Got a little Barkley, maybe New York Blue, maybe coming to New York, little headlines from the days, and then the football.
I like
to
it.
get it started.
I like it. Absolutely right.
Crazy things happening here.
Yes.
Crazy things. We bounced a football and put a newspaper on the desk. What are we going to do tomorrow?
Jenna's got curls in her hair.
Stand by. But I don't have a pen is what I don't have. There you go. What a team. All right, let's start the show. Two of the hottest teams in the history of the universe, also the NBA this season. They both faced off last night. It's the Blazers, winners of 13 in a row, and the Rockets, winners of 22 of their last 23. One of the lesser-known rules in the NBA, guys, game can't end in a tie. This one went to the Rockets, thanks in large part to James Harden, his 42 points. Rockets now own a 4-game lead in the Western Conference. Chris Carter, I'll start with you with all that balancing. How will you answer this? Is it time to consider the Houston Rockets the favorites to win the NBA title?
Well, I think many have looked at this, and we started the conversation before Golden State got injured. You know, will Golden State, how important is the #1 seed? And then we started seeing Steph got hurt. And we're like, you know, how important is it to have Steph back? So now it's kind of evolved to, oh, well, Golden State, are they as good as Houston with guys being injured? Oh, well, now let's get down to it. Well, who is the favorite? The team that's played the best, typically, they would be the favorite. That's not the case. In the Eastern Conference, we've seen Toronto. They've dominated the East. They've improved their team, their overall bench, but people aren't going to give them credit for it. Now, in the West, because Houston, they've changed their roster, and they've changed the style for which they play. Does this style match up more with Golden State? I would say yes. Are we going to give them credit for how they've played for 6 months? Like, at some point, we have to give them credit. Yes, this is the best team in the NBA, but are they the favorite? They're not the favorite because the champ, you still got to knock the champ out. The champ has all the experience. The champ, we should rightfully, because they're NBA champs. Houston is the best team. Are they the favorite? I don't think they should be the favorite until we see Golden State is either not healthy, Golden State gets down in a series. I can understand. I'm giving Houston credit for how good they've been. But being a champion, being a multiple champion that Golden State is, given that all their players are going to be back, I would say just to play on the word, yes, I'm much respect to Houston. But Golden State is still the champ, and until Houston knocks them out, that's what I'm going to say. Golden State should still be the favorite, as long as they go into the playoffs healthy.
What's the difference then, Nick, between the best team in the NBA and the favorite team in the NBA?
Well, I understand CeCe's distinction, which is right now the Rockets have played the best. Right now the Rockets are the healthiest, so right now they're the best team. But that doesn't mean if right now, if all things were equal, if they played each other, CeCe would pick the Rockets to beat the Warriors. So that's his distinction, that the Warriors are still, in his eyes, the favorite
because
over
of the championship pedigree.
Because of the championship pedigree.
All the things that they've been through, we need to consider that compared to, are we just going to look at what's happened in this basketball season?
Full Warriors strength, full Houston strength, not where they are right now. Okay.
Yes.
And so I understand that distinction, and I think that is a fair distinction to draw. I do not think the best team has to be always the favorite. I think a great example is the East. Toronto clearly has been the best team in the East this year. I will never believe they're the favorite to win the East till they got 3 wins in a series and they're up with a few seconds left on the Cavs. So I understand the distinction. I no longer think that distinction applies to the Western Conference. I think Houston is the best team, and I think as we sit here on the second day of spring, March 21st, I believe the Houston Rockets are the favorite to win the NBA championship. I think we have a sample size of nearly a full season. We have a sample size of exactly a half season of Harden, Paul, Capella playing. 41 games they've played together. They're 39-2. We have seen Houston play the next 8 teams in the West. So 7 of those teams will make the playoffs. But teams 2 through 9 in the West this year, they are 21-3. And if we are going to go to historically, The Rockets almost assuredly this year will win at least 65 games. They need to go 8-3 or better down the stretch to get to 65 wins. Why do I point out 65 wins? 65 wins have happened 20 times in NBA history. 15 of those times, that team has won the championship. So we are getting to historical markers with this basketball team. We already talked about how their offense, right now it dropped a tick, so it's no longer the greatest offense in NBA history. It's like the second greatest offense in NBA history. But the three in the other top four all won a championship. We are talking about historical regular season greatness from a team that, even if I remove the historical lens, I just look at it as a basketball fan in 2018. The one thing I cannot find with the Rockets is what they're missing, aside from something they can't grab right now, which is experience, championship pedigree. The one thing they're missing, they're ineligible to get during the regular season.
Said.
So let's just look at this guy up here, because there have been moments where we've considered James Harden a phenomenal player, but slightly maybe underrated because he hasn't fully been able to prove himself in the postseason. Based on everything you've watched in the regular season, what he's been able to do, how he's been able to work with Chris Paul when people were wondering how these two would work together this season, do you still think is a bit underrated?
No, he can't be underrated. I mean, if you watch the games and you see what Harden is doing, he's the best offensive player in the NBA. And I believe that the players that they have around him, and I talk about this quite often, styles, team styles, and James Harden. James Harden, he's got more versatility to his game and his teammates that he's playing with. You have to give them so much respect. And the way D'Antoni has the offense and the way they close out games, the way they do the pick and roll just to get the mismatch compared to trying to pick and actually roll old school basketball. Like, they pick and roll to get a matchup to make guys switch, Jenna, to get Harden on anyone he wants on the court. And they have the shooters to be able to space the court. He breaks down that defender better than anyone right now in the NBA. So Harden, man, you have to give Harden respect.
The only reason James Harden won't be, and pardon me, the only reason James Harden won't be the unanimous MVP this year, which has only been done once, Steph did it, LeBron was a vote away from doing it a few years ago, is because some people don't like his style. Some people don't like the herky-jerky, slow motion.
His ability to draw fouls on people. It's a style, too, that's unorthodox, and most of the great players, they don't have that.
Is that a skill, or is that
No. It's an enormous skill. I'm just saying, develop. You got 120 people that are going to vote for this award. There are 4 or 5 of them, I believe, that don't like watching Harden play. So they're like, I'm going to vote for Anthony Davis.
Aesthetically?
Aesthetically. Just simply don't like. But Harden is clearly going to win the MVP this year. And now we've got a 4-year sample of Harden's play, where I do think it's fair to ask, is he underrated nationally? Most people believe the hierarchy goes like this. LeBron 1, KD 2, Steph 3, and then a scrum for that next spot. Harden, Anthony Davis, Kawhi when he's healthy. Some people love Russ. The shine's come off him a little bit this year. But the last 4 years, Harden's gone second, ninth, and now first in MVP voting. I'm assigning that to him. I think show Harden. Let me do one of those blind reveals. That's Harden versus someone over the last 4 years. That's not this year. 4 years cumulative. Harden's beating him in points, trailing slightly in rebounds, beating him soundly in assists, nearly identical PERs. That's over a 4-year sample. Show me who that guy is. The guy everyone says is the second best player in the world.
That's interesting.
James Harden has as good of an argument as Steph, as good of an argument as Durant, that he is the second best player in the world.
So why do we talk about Durant in a totally different class than we do James Harden?
I think we've liked Durant. Durant has less holes in his game than Harden had up to this point. The way I think also the pieces for which he's playing with, I think that we had Durant and Harden very, very close to each other until we saw Durant last season in the postseason against LeBron and with the Warriors and being the MVP. I think that was kind of one of the stamps of approval the public gave to Kevin Durant. Harden hadn't had that moment. Nick, to your point, as far as his unorthodox style and people not liking that style, there's also people that don't like Durant's style. They don't like LeBron's style because he complains. Harden complains. But Man, for me to stay up, for the hours that we're working, for me to stay up and watch them play last night, I'm going to tell you, you got to be a special ball player. And that's where Harden is right now. It's a developed style that also has been cultivated by the offensive system that they have in Houston and the players that they have put around him. It is time for James Harden to shine. He has never played better with his teammates, and that style has never been developed where he can take advantage of NBA defenses, more so than any point I've seen in James's career.
And the other reason that he has been considered a tier beneath Durant, other than the defense, which, by the way, that obviously wasn't shown on that graphic. Durant is a better defensive player, and we have to be fair on that, is because prior to this year, Harden had never been the best player on a team that you credibly thought could win the championship. Durant had been the best player on a number of teams that you credibly thought, whether it was in Oklahoma City or Golden State, you credibly thought could win the championship. But I want to quote Daryl Morey on one thing. He said this on a panel I moderated at the Sloan Analytics Conference. And when he said it, the crowd kind of drew back. But I've been thinking about it. He said, in James Harden, we have the best isolation player in NBA history. Now, when you start saying best in NBA history, you start thinking, okay, let's think about how Kobe was in isolation. Jordan didn't do a ton of isolation because of the offense they're running. Like you're thinking about it. But then you watch the Rockets at the end of games. How do they close out games? ISO James Harden.
Yes.
ISO, and how's it worked out for them, at least thus far this year? I mean, it's worked out to where they're pacing to win 66 games.
The only guy we compare him to, and it's hard to compare him because one's a post player, my man Isaiah Thomas says, Kareem.
Oh, okay.
If you say that ISO is throwing it into the post, which is a little bit different.
A little different.
He's the only guy you can, I think, actually compare him to.
And you have to think that the narrative changes a little bit if James Harden does go ahead and win the title.
Oh.
Then we start talking.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Then you start talking about him historically among shooting guards. Him versus Dwayne Wade. Him versus Kobe. It changes.
What is the headline on the paper, CC?
Lose clues.
Yes. Barkley.
Lose clues. We're talking about Saquon Barkley coming up next. Barkley, is he the best player available in the NFL draft? Not sure the Post thinks so. First things first, next.
What's the headline on the front page?